западники поставляют оружие Украине и говорят, а мы здесь дальше ничего не контролируем, и неважно, как они применяются. Ну и мы также можем сказать, вот мы поставили кому-нибудь что-нибудь, и дальше мы ничего не контролируем. И пускай они думают на эту тему.
Far from the battlefields of Ukraine, Russian President Putin pokes US-led West.
Российская Федерация не исключает для себя развитие военно-технического сотрудничества с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой в соответствии с подписанным сегодня документом.
При обсуждении ситуации в Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе была высказана обоюдная заинтересованность в построении ВТР надежной и адекватной архитектуры безопасности на принципах неприменения силы и мирного урегулирования споров, в которой не будет места закрытым военно-политическим блокам.
Putin's Asia-Pacific foray sends multiple messages to the West. First, he's not without friends, and the West's bid to isolate the Russian president globally has been a failure. Second, in wooing two of the Kremlin's historical partners, North Korea and Vietnam, Moscow has clearly signaled that it is not ceding preeminence in the Asia-Pacific to the United States. The significance of the timing of Putin's visit to North Korea and Vietnam is not lost on political observers. Putin's visit comes close on the heels of the US and Western allies allowing Ukraine to strike Russian territory with their weapons. Putin's response was swift. The Russian strongman publicly announced tactical nuclear drills and added that Russia would consider changing its nuclear doctrine amid tensions with the West. NATO countries in Europe must remember that they have states with small territories and dense population. They must take this factor into consideration prior to discussing strikes deep inside the Russian territory. Putin also reminded unnamed NATO countries in Europe of their small territories and dense populations, implying they could be easily obliterated. Soon, Putin took the shadow war with the West to a different corner of the globe, reviving a Cold War-era mutual defense pact with North Korea and even signing a NATO-like defense pact with Pyongyang. With his ominous warnings at the end of a two-day trip to North Korea and Vietnam, Putin seemed to be preparing the ground for a new round of escalation between Russia and the West. And it isn't just the Asia-Pacific. Some analysts suggest that Putin may also be considering giving weapons to Iran-backed Houthis, who have been attacking US vessels and aircraft in and around the Red Sea. So is this the beginning of a fresh round of Russia-West tensions, and that too in different geographies? Alexander Gabuev, director of the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center, said, and I quote, "I am afraid we are in a bad spiral, that policymakers have an illusion of control. The really dangerous part of what is happening is that Russia is ready to act as a spoiler and is determined to extract a cost from the West for supporting Ukraine militarily, and it is ready to do several irreversible acts, like sharing sophisticated military technology with North Korea." Putin's Asia-Pacific foray comes weeks after Russia warned it could arm enemies of Western nations supplying weapons to Ukraine. Soon, Russia sent its warships to Cuba. In response, an American fast-attack submarine also sailed into Cuba in a rerun of the Cold War-era Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin's bid to counter the West isn't limited to Asia-Pacific alone. In the recent past, the Kremlin has persistently expressed solidarity with the global South, accusing the West of pursuing neo-colonialist policies. Putin's narrative has gained traction in the region and beyond. In Africa, there has been scant support for punitive measures against Russia for its illegal and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine. Collectively, Western governments are failing to counter Moscow's accusation that they selectively absolve themselves of rules and standards they apply to others. Recently, the Kremlin also listed a key criteria for joining the Moscow and China-led BRICS grouping. Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said, and I quote, "For us, one of the key criteria for admission to BRICS and welcoming partner states is non-participation in the illegal sanction policies, illegal restrictive measures against any BRICS participant, first of all, of course, against Russia." Putin isn't only challenging the West militarily. Russia, like China, is also intent on breaking up the US dollar-dominated international financial system.
Набирает силу объективный, необратимый процесс дедоларизации наших хозяйственных связей. Предпринимаются усилия по отработке эффективных механизмов взаимных расчетов и валютно-финансового контроля. Как результат, доля доллара в экспортно-импортных операциях в рамках БРИКС снижается. В прошлом году она составила всего лишь 28,7%.
Ahead of his North Korea visit, Putin spoke about developing a payment mechanism that, he said, will not be controlled by the West. In an article for a North Korean newspaper, Putin wrote, and I quote, "We will develop alternative trade and mutual settlement mechanisms not controlled by the West, jointly oppose illegitimate unilateral restrictions, and shape the architecture of equal and indivisible security in Eurasia." He echoed this economic decoupling theme in Vietnam as well. Putin said, and I quote, "Our countries are consistently pursuing the transition to settlements in national currencies and striving to create sustainable channels of cooperation in lending activities and banking." Putin's bid to counter Western influence isn't just limited to regions in the immediate Russian neighborhood. The rise of the far right in the recent European Parliament elections is also seen as a boost to Putin. From Germany, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and even France. Far-right parties in these countries have shown they see Western sanctions against Russia as an overreaction. Many far-right politicians in the European Parliament have refused to vote on policies that aim to punish or criticize Putin or Russia. Case in point, the Prime Minister of EU and NATO nation Hungary, Viktor Orbán, has for long been a vocal opponent of Russian sanctions. Another NATO member who has adopted a similar stance in Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Russia's fight against the present world order since the end of the Cold War resonates with far-right parties. Putin is seen by the far right as a strong and conservative leader who can counter the policies of the West. As the world heads into a period of political uncertainty, with crucial elections looming in the United States, UK, and France, Russia sees a big opportunity, an opportunity to counter the West's global influence. And it is in this context that the Russian president's recent visits to North Korea and Vietnam become extremely significant. The world watches closely as Putin moves on his quest to reshape the global order, and the question on everyone's minds is, what will Putin do next?